Hello, this is Omar Obidat.
And Mariam Sabit.
Welcome to our fourth episode of the UAE Competition Law series. Well, today we don't have a specific topic, do we?
No, it's free flowing.
So free flowing, and we look back and talk about the UAE competition law and implementing the regulations. This is not a fixed legislation. I've seen late in 2021 so many laws from the copyright law, trademarks law, the companies law, industrial property. So many laws have been reenacted or totally revamped in UAE, and I guess the competition law is not immune either.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there's room for the competition law to cover a lot of the elements that needs to be more clarified and elaborated on.
In fact, we do have information about legislative review of the competition law and regulations, and we can only speculate what those areas are, what the areas are to improve. Can you give me one example?
I think that I would say if we go to the hot topic of merger control, for example, it would be more clarity on relevant market. For example, if it covers UAE only, the specific geographic scope for now is UAE. What else? What are the other parameters that the relevant market could cover? The thresholds as well. The 40% seems like an arbitrary number, and they should keep it open to the actual practice. So basically, the law should also specifically address the competition authority's actual practice and mindset in looking into the enforcement of the law.
You've mentioned in a previous episode, actually, that the ultimate factor to be considered as a threshold is not only 40%, but the overall impact or effect to the competition in the market. So that could be the new threshold.
Yes, that could be the new threshold. The law and the executive regulations outlines a little bit what could be taken into consideration as considered pro-competitive, and you have to have a competition analysis. But I think that instead of us or other practitioners always saying the narrative that, okay, this is the law, but in reality, the competition department or authority basically adopts an approach of looking into the local effect. We want all of that information in the law.
Oh, mind you, we've heard this time and again, the competition authority in the UAE is not happy about many transactions being filed for merger control scrutiny in other jurisdictions, but not in the UAE.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure that the best way to address this will be to review the regulations addressing the thresholds for competition law merger control applications.
And the exemptions. I think the exemptions need to be specifically, because we struggle a lot to explain that, okay, be careful when looking into the exemptions, they might not be applicable. And we want more clarity on the law that specifies on the topic of exemptions.
Oh, yes, it's creating confusion in the market. I've seen some clients who are in the pharmaceutical sector and presumed wrongfully that since they're in the pharmaceutical industry, they are exempted. While as many of our pharmaceutical clients receive training compliance with the competition law, review their contracts, etc.
Yes. And actually, another point which I would like to see in the new law is remedies, because remedies does allow, if a transaction does seem from the outset problematic from a competition perspective, it does allow the authority not to reject it and instead give the parties the time and the possibility to actually amend or to actually have certain measures on a conditional approval basis, to explicitly include the different process for remedies. It is allowed under the law, but it hasn't really been implemented. And I believe that it should be also clarified in more detail what kind of remedies could be available.
Yes, when you look at the function of the competition law authority, it's much more complex and difficult than any other government regulator, because they are addressing economic studies in every sector possible. So if you look at the applications for economic concentration coming from a ride-hailing company or coming from a visa processing corporation, or even companies involved in the manufacturing of FMCG, it requires those economists to switch from one sector to another and understand those sector carefully. So I think to have that complex and deep knowledge of industry, you need to have strong capacity building within the department. And to do that, you need to have a good revenue generated from this
Yes.
authority.
So are you're probably your next point is the merger filing fees.
Well, I understand that it's free.
Yes, so far you don't actually pay any fees for a notification.
And is this common?
No, actually, I think that most authorities abroad, there's a certain filing fee that they actually impose on. And actually, there's also a process where you can actually even submit a brief summary first for an initial assessment instead of submitting the entire merger filing. So those are one of the things that we really would love to see in the new law is the possibility of having a two-tier system whereby the phase one is to just submit a simple query with maybe just a minimum submission that could allow the authority to perhaps decide on that. And if the authority feels that, no, this is actually a concerning transaction, you need to do a complete filing, then that would be applicable. So that two-tier system would be really recommended to cover.
So, so there are reforms that can be made to the
Absolutely.
competition law,
Yeah.
and it can be about exemptions, about threshold of the merger control trigger. It can be about the fees collected by the authority, and also it can be about the clarifications to the agreements that are in violation of
Yeah.
the law.
And one thing that, which while not in the law, we'd like to see as well is maybe having some decisions published and have a place where the decisions and the records can be published for everyone to see so we can have a good benchmark on what are the different decisions that were issued, the general direction of the competition authority. That would be really helpful.
I think that's a very important topic you mentioned now, because I think your knowledge of the competition law practice is based on the applications that you're administering.
Yes.
Okay. So to conclude with, I think there are areas of improvement under the competition law, but those areas of improvement, are we to expect them coming anytime soon? I would say probably based on the current pipeline of laws being amended, introduced, it seems like a pretty quick process.
Yes, and then one thing also that we want to make sure and really emphasize on is that yes, the competition authority in the UAE is active. It's an active authority because we've had several queries on saying, is the authority, do you have a competition authority? Is it active? So definitely, yes, it is active. It's time for companies to consider that.
Well, that concludes our 4th episode of the UAE Competition Law series. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.